Hello and welcome. My name is Meepolis, they, he, she, and today's pick is John Constantine. Hellblazer Trade Volume 2, collecting Hellblazer issues 10 to 13, Hellblazer Annual 1, and the Horrorist 1 and 2. Initially published across late 1988 and very early 1989, with the Horrorist coming out in 1995 and 1996. This trade was collected and published in 2007 by Vertigo Comics. This is part of my ongoing plan to read through Vertigo for some reason. I guess because they were such a key touchstone for so-called mature readers when I was first taking an interest in comics for adults. It's been a bit hit or miss, although always thought-provoking, I guess. Suggested by the publisher for mature audiences, content notes for nudity, sex, dismemberment, body horror, sexual abuse, harm to children, racist language, disease, fascist symbols, and slurs. Nature of violence felt like an escalation of longer and longer stretches of edgy/gruesome imagery. Keywords that came to mind reading this trade: mortality, flesh is weak, dream, apocalypse, gets the girl, death, and shock. Starting out issue by issue, on the opening page for Sex and Death, we have a panel of a fetus with Constantine's head barreling through space, alongside a bunch of sperm-looking things containing other partially formed fetuses? Entering the atmosphere, a ghostly/now adult Constantine is birthed out of this shell and falls to Earth, through a house and into the subway before he seems to gain control of this dream landscape. Trying to save his girlfriend from the Christo-fascist resurrection crusade, Comics Vine says this is the conclusion of their particular storyline, but then we get an encore of what has quickly become my least favorite thing about this series, which is Abby really not liking Constantine, for a good reason, in my opinion. Swamp Thing defending Constantine, and Delano bringing them back together again and again. Fun! Looking at the creative team, we start off with the previously discussed writer Jamie Delano, who launched Constantine after his origins in Swamp Thing. Art for most of these issues is by prolific Vertigo penciler Mark Buckingham, who I've previously talked about on Sandman, and who has worked on many titles in my TBR pile, and new to me, Richard Piers Rayner. Colors continue to be by Lovern Kindzierski, who was also here for the first Hellblazer trade and the short story collection, The Sandman Endless Nights. Lettering was done by Todd Klein, who has worked prolifically across Sandman, Hellblazer, and Swamp Thing. Circling back to that new-faced, Richard Piers Rayner is an English artist who was just getting his career underway at this point. He is apparently best known for his work on the graphic novel edition of Road to Perdition, and has also worked on Doctor Who. Moving right along, we have Hellblazer issue 11, Newcastle, A Taste of Things to Come, wherein Constantine, in a devastated Newcastle, is reminded of, quote, the most harrowing experience of his life, end quote, which continues to give satanic panic vibes with abuse and gruesome ritual. Our hero realizes he must seek revenge. Then we enter Hellblazer issue 12, The Devil You Know. Starting out, we run headlong into disease discourse and a reference to, quote, Shanghai flu, although Constantine's current problem appears to be the return of symptoms from his containing Nergal's blood. Doing a bit more digging into Nergal, I wasn't exactly sure what to make of him in the last volume, but I'm starting to settle on not being a fan. Obviously, he's Constantine's enemy, and he do bad things because he bad, but a predator creature that has tainted blood and gives off some gay vibes is just not something I can feel good about. What are your thoughts? A high point was when Constantine reconnects with his former, quote, friend, who currently is a ghost lost in cyberspace, which I do find to be both an intriguing idea and an interesting landscape to render on the page, which then continues pretty seamlessly into issue 13, On the Beach. A collage of past and present with a tilt towards the dream/unreal. Highly expressive and very yellow. Ultimately, a nuclear apocalypse where a woman gives birth to a two-headed flying seal. as their flesh rots. Then it was all a dream, or rather, a nightmare. Then we jump to The Bloody Saints from Hellblazer Annual Volume 1, still written by Jamie Delano, with lettering by Todd Klein and coloring by Lovern Kindzierski. Art this time by Bryan Talbot, someone we saw previously in Sandman. Lots of wrinkly and or rotting flesh, unattractiveness played up for edgy, dramatic effect. Then we hit an issue entitled Venus of the Hardsell, Mucous Membrane Constantine / Lester, Snot Music 1978 video by Dean Motter. An interesting angle on things. New to me, Dean Motter appears to have been born in Cleveland and subsequently worked out of Toronto, New York City, and Atlanta. Motter started his comics career art directing Andromeda, a Canadian comic series that adapted various big-time science fiction creators, which does sound pretty interesting. According to the Wikipedia, he is best known for his album cover designs. An issue that really stands out from the art style that has come so far, Venus of the Hardsell, is an attempt to render a punk song as a comic. Largely successful, I would say, although lyrically a bit thin perhaps, trying to tackle all of what Constantine sees as social ills in one short song. It has actually been recorded by a group called Spider Legs, though, so I'll have to try and link that somewhere. Then the trade jumps 6 years into the future with the prestige miniseries The Horrorist, issues 1 and 2, which does many things, but most notably to me, because I be who I be, is how it ends. You see, Constantine is tracking down a woman named Angel, who was transplanted out of Mozambique as a young girl after witnessing war crimes. This experience resulted in her having the power to redistribute pain, immersing the people around her in so-called America in the kinds of oppression she witnessed as a child. This miniseries ends with Constantine and Angel having sex, because of course it does. Angel pouring all of the suffering and torture her powers have to offer into Constantine until she dies, and he finds new feelings of humanness. Fun! They said very sarcastically. Not sure we are really hitting the anti-hero line quite right in this one. Written again by Jamie Delano, art this time is done by David Lloyd, who we last saw in V for Vendetta. Lettering is done this time by Elitta, a freelance UK letterer. Elitta has gone on to web design and silk painting. Flipping back through this trade, the art style is definitely one of the better parts of the book for me, and perhaps few others. What can I say? I actually really dig this period in horror comics, although this isn't as potent as the even earlier stuff. Revisiting the work of David Lloyd was certainly a nice surprise. Looking at the way different people are represented in this trade, ... it is far from my favorite thing. Scrolling through reviews on Goodreads and beyond, it does seem like something people appreciate about Constantine is his standing up for the proverbial little guy, which does speak at least to the context they come at it from. Change. I am still trying to build my own understanding of the context of before the turn of the century as far as comics and pop culture goes. It feels like this lags a bit behind, but what do I know? Any way you sort it, expectations are hopefully a bit higher these days for better informed and humanized, diverse characters. I mean, the other option is total fascistic stagnation, so let's not get too upset that these sorts of things keep changing, please. That said, bye y'all, keep reading, and stand with striking workers. And Literally Graphic is created on land that should be given back to the traditional landholders, which in this case is, to my knowledge, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, an Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation.